What's up? We're back at it again, and in today's video, we'll be discussing power creep. The term power creep refers to the gradual unbalancing of a trading card game, video game, or role-playing game due to the release of new content, leaving older content underpowered. In Pokemon, this could take the form of Pokemon with powerful new moves, typings, abilities, or stats, and in some cases, a combination of all four. But how did it all start? First 4 generations set the stage for the future of Pokemon battling. They introduced 17 of the 18 types, they introduced abilities, the physical special split, and double battles. Without any fundamental changes to the way Pokemon battling works, future generations had to find ways to improve upon what they already had. This is where power creep really set in. Pokemon in forms from the first 4 generations make up only 18% of the top 50 fastest Pokemon, and only 16% for attack and 14% for a special attack. Keep in mind, Pokemon in forms from these generations make up around 43% of all Pokemon. Let's take a look at a classic example of power creep in the fan favorite Garchomp. Introduced in Generation 4, Garchomp was Cynthia's ace and notorious for sending small children back to the Pokemon Center. It had a staggering 130 base attack and a solid 102 base speed. It found itself in the same tier as Pokemon like Groudon, Kyogre, and Mewtwo. In Gen 5, Garchomp's reign of terror was far from over. It won the World Championships in 2012 and it was used on over 37% of all teams. Gen 6 came around, and with it came 48 Mega Evolutions and 2 Primal Reversions, as well as a new typing that Garchomp was weak to. Many of these had busted stats, and the meta was the fastest and strongest it had ever been. Despite this, Garchomp managed to win the World Championships in 2015, but was on over 45% of teams. Generation 7 came with Z moves, which were super powerful 5th moves that any Pokemon could use as long as it held a Z Crystal and had a move of that type. You could also fuse Necrozma and Solgaleo or Lunala into a single Pokemon, which allowed you to still have 5 other Pokemon on your team. Mid-battle, you could also transform that fusion into a 754 base stat total super boss that they could then use a 200 base power nuke that chooses whether to do physical or special damage, but only after a 6-hour long cutscene. And oh yeah, Mega Evolutions and Primal Versions were legal too. With all these beasts running around, if you're Garchomp, how do you compete? That's right, you don't. What a breath of fresh air. Not a Mega, Z-move, or Primal in sight. Well, now there's Dynamax Pokemon everywhere. Dynamax is a mechanic where Pokemon grow to an unnatural size, where their max HP is increased and all their moves turn into basically Z-moves with secondary effects known as max moves. But don't worry, it's only for 3 turns and it's accessible to almost every Pokemon. Balanced, right? Wrong. Because surprise surprise, Game Freak has favorites. They gave certain Pokemon special Dynamax forms known as Gigantamax. These forms have max moves with even more special secondary effects that can turn the tide of almost any battle. For example, Charizard gets G-Max Wildfire, which does 1/6 of every Pokemon's health for 4 turns, and this is after doing massive damage. This means Charizard easily wins games even after being put 6 feet under. But don't worry, although it doesn't get a Gigantamax form, Garchomp still had a chance. Well, that would be the case if it weren't for a certain Sorted Doggo with the best stats, typing, ability, and move pool in the game. Yup, Zacian. This thing had a 170 base attack and a 148 base speed that was so good that they had to nerf it a generation later. To make matters worse, Zacian had a 100 base power steel move that did double damage to all Dynamax Pokemon, meaning it mowed down anything in its path. And that's not to speak of the other tyrants in this generation. And here we are in the present, Generation 9. We have terrestrialization, which is probably the most balanced gimmick yet, where any Pokemon can transform into one of 19 types. Yes, I said 19. In the Indigo Disc DLC, they just released a new Terra type known as the Stellar type. Regulation F came out recently, and Garchomp's fallen off harder than Mufasa in The Lion King. With Pokemon like Fluttermane and Chien-Pao that have broken stats and even more broken abilities, team building is a nightmare, let alone with a Garchomp. And don't even get me started on all the Intimidate mons running around. Although slightly different for each one, several Pokemon share a similar story of suffering from power creep. Long gone are the days where Garchomp towered above the competition. And as the franchise grows to a staggering amount of over 1,000 Pokemon, it's becoming a matter of keep up or keep out.